So without further ado, we'll go ahead and kick off into our SEO trends of 2023. And keep in mind, the chat is open. I'll be monitoring it the entire time, but you're also welcome to come on camera if you just want to chime in or raise your hand. That's why this is in Meet form and not webinar, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This is one of my favorite events every year. It's just starting the year where publishers are committed and determined to make it their best year yet for traffic. And my favorite traffic source of all of them is organic search, which is why we kicked the year off. You can move into that first slide. I am so happy to be here with everyone today. As Lauren mentioned, we love the interactiveness of talking in these. If you have a question but don't want to come on screen, we have various ways to reach out to us. Please don't hesitate, especially if you're one of Freestar's publishers. You can absolutely reach out with questions to any time after. And even if you're not, we still want to hear from you. My email address is lindsay.valdez@freestar.io. So feel free to reach out. We love talking with publishers all the time. This is the agenda for today. I'm going to start with a brief recap of 2022. I also want to say that I work with very experienced SEOs all day, all week at Freestar with different publishers. This is something many of you know the ins and outs of and will feel it when I say 2022 was an incredible busy year for Google. There was over 10 major algorithm updates of various kinds. So we'll quickly go through that just because it's what leads us into our trends for this year. And the changes that they make are to drive publishers into or content creators of any kind into a new habits and ways to do things. So we're going to recap that and then talk about the biggest trends. So you can go into the next one, which is I'm going to start with just the recap. One more slide of 2022. It started slow. I think by, if anyone was going to ask, it's kind of a fun game, when Google would do updates, their large updates. I always kind of pick March, another in the summer, a couple towards the end of the year. That's their normal schedule. This year, nothing major really happened until May 25th, and it was one of the largest, if not the largest, one of the year. I feel like it was a time when this was a core, number 2 is a core update there, and then followed. So from May to December, 10 major updates. That's a lot in a small amount of time. Now, with Google algorithm updates, I hate to say it, but sometimes I get to a publisher and it's a little too late, right? It's like having not monitored or kept up to date with the industry as it moved along in the last solid 5 years, I might meet with them and say, all these things need to change, but an algorithm update rolls out and there really wasn't time. So to some degree, I'm always working with publishers to either prevent them from being penalized or traffic being adjusted from an algorithm update, prevent it or recover for it. So those are kind of the 2 stages, and you always have to kind of be working towards their best practices. I will mention these are the big ones. So 2 core updates I already mentioned. Those are more, there's nothing, they give you no information. There's nothing they're specifically targeting. I almost feel like it's like they send the algorithm out and then it sort of like takes into account all the things they're working towards and then just reshuffles the top results into their, kind of a new home for rankings. Another major, going back to the left side of the screen, the page experience algorithm, which this is where you guys spent all of 2021 worrying about CLS and Core Web Vitals. Those are 3 speed metrics that Google factors in to this page experience algorithm. HTTPS, all of you should have secure. This is a kind of an older one of the years. You should be secure. Intrusive interstitials. This is the time, maybe 2015, 16, when they started penalizing for annoying pop-ups. And there is also, mobile responsive, like mobile friendly is a factor here, but since it went to desktop, that one was not listed here. What was once only applied to your mobile performance is now hitting your desktop. So the same grading criteria. Next, one of my favorite was the helpful content updates. This was a brand new signal, which is kind of different than an algorithm update. It was like, if you take their algorithm, and we all know there's over, you hear the same phrase, there's over 200 factors in the algorithm. So think of it, they're grading your website on 200 plus different factors. And the helpful content update was a new signal within that. Favors original helpful content written by people for people. You'll hear me talk about this a bit coming up. The point that your content should have a point, really, and be something not just, a whole article written loosely towards a topic, but actually be able to help the user get to what they want to do. Next, number 3, I'm going to bump to the right, product review updates. There were 3, I want to say 3 this year, 3 product review updates this year and another few last year. If I had to say one set of sites I saw this year take the hardest algorithm hits or traffic hits in organic search, was product reviews. A lot of publishers that had just kind of half-assed this strategy of getting shoppable content and product content on their sites without adding much to it, saw some impact possibly this year for those pages. And then the last 2 updates of the year were actually spam related. We listed a few things amongst many things that they're trying to target in the spam update, which is AI detection. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. Some other purchase links, footer links, some of the same more shady practices that publishers still continue to kind of use from time to time. Google will continue penalizing and trying to clear that up. So from those, you can go to the next slide. From these is what they did last year. We kind of move, and of course, at Freestar, we have access to data and monitoring or looking at a website's traffic results to see what kind of impact was made this year. And when I say, I talked to publishers that were really panicking about a 15% drop, when I quickly would follow up that I worked with publishers that saw literally a 70 to 80% drop in organic search traffic this year. So to say that let's all join together to make our efforts as above board, just because in the coming year, Google's getting better and better about, finding these tactics, these shortcuts, these things that they're in their guidelines that breaks their guidelines and penalizing against them. Most publishers at Freestar, most publishers that I know and work with are very dedicated to their content, dedicated to business practices, and really want to be creating the best content out there. And that's who I, consider myself speaking to today, is this group, because if you're anything other than these, at least primarily above board white hat tactics, you will, I just don't think there's a whole lot of beating Google long term. And you may be doing it right now. You may be doing some tactics that do break guidelines and getting away with it, but their algorithm is getting more and more advanced every day.
So Lindsay, as we talk about content, we've all been hearing a lot about AI generated content. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts?
Yes, such a good question. Now, I will speak completely honest here. I love the idea of efficiencies for publishers and for creators. So when the Jaspers and the other tools we have soon, we have which one is Chat GPT, that's getting a ton of hype right now. This is a new open source AI tool that is claiming to be as human as humans in that sense. So what do I think about AI? I believe there is room for tools that make content writing more efficient. That would be things like meta descriptions and things that really can be more robotic in nature and don't need to bring the voice and the uniqueness to the page. Is it going to be my favorite thing? No. Why? Because I'm a writer, because I'm, I promote authentic and real writers, humans that are experts in their field, investing in editorial, which is my top point here, supporting the writing community and the things that make websites more unique kind of in voice, I'll always be that way. Can you use AI for things like brief builders and tools to make things faster for your teams? I do think there's a place for that. That's a great question. Be careful. That's what it is. There's nothing I can say right now. I could say don't use AI at all. I think that would be foolish. There are sites using it right now, ranking with it right now. I would almost say make sure whatever you're generating is edited. Absolutely, edit it, because accuracy is going to be the thing I think that could flag Google systems that it's AI written. Make sure that it's accurate, and then bring some voice to it. Creating original content, though, because of this is the #1 trend. Lauren, that was such a great question to start with. This is because AI is a huge trend. My switch trend is to just invest in editorial and create original content in some way. Gary, you'll see on the right, 60% of the internet is duplicate. This reason that he says right here is a lot of the reason for other struggles like indexing, which I talk about later on. It's just that people started copying and rewriting, rewording. I have worked with publishers where I was able to see their article, Google it, and see the top ranked article, and they had just almost rewritten paragraph for paragraph down the page, like shook up a few words, made it a little different. I do not see that working long term. Regurgitating content is what I call that. So some things here: invest in editorial. It's not cheap, but it is real and it is authentic, and it long term, it just depends. Long term, that can be the way that you beat your competitors, right? If they are investing in lesser than techniques in that, they could be penalized while you continue to be favored. #2, all of these are things also I'll mention that I have pulled right from publishers that I work with and have experience with, and have seen the impact when someone does, #2, niche down a little further. There was once a time when it was okay to be a publisher that covered 15 different main topics, from food and recipes to travel to pets to parenting, all on one site. It's something I see now that is a navigation just filled with 150 subcategories that don't tie into one general theme of your site. This is major because Google's trying to figure out who's the expert, and it's hard to deem some website an expert in financial advice when they're also telling you how to bake a pie and how to potty train, right? Those are all different topics that have kind of been led to the experts, where you might have one single website now dedicated to all of those topics. So niche down if you can. That's the advice there. If you find yourself covering a lot of topics, you are working to become an expert in your one main topic. Look at your data, find articles that maybe didn't get a lot of traffic this year, didn't do well. You're no longer seeing the return that you were. Consolidate and button up your brand. You should be, almost in most cases, be about one thing. Avoid extensive automation. Spoke to this. Extensive is the key word. And this is Google's word, actually. Avoid extensive automation. It's almost as if they're saying the same as I said. Efficiencies can be great, but don't do it for an entire site that's just spun up on content that you have no expertise in. Be interesting. Content isn't the same as it used to be, right? We used to all have our favorite bloggers, dare I say the word, our favorite sites that have, that we would go to every day. In some ways, it still exists through email. Email newsletters is one of the most valuable audience. It's not the topic of today, but it's so valuable because people signed up for it. Usually that's because you have a voice, or you're interesting, or you're funny, or the type of information you share is different than everyone else. So in these types of ways, find a strategy where you're creating original content on your site this year.
So Linz, if you look back, if we're kind of going back to Google in 2022, what's one sentence you would say that you explains their end goal right now?
Google is trying in the blink of an eye to find the very best answer. Content will always be, in my book, number one. Content. They're trying to crawl a page, and if you're a user looking for how to build something, they're going to try to return something that lists out the steps for how to build, because that's how I searched. I'm looking for steps, and they have figured out through their own machine learning what someone's intent is for the content. Get the user the best possible answer. Second to that, don't destroy them on the user experience. I believe there's factors that are overrated and given too much weight. Google, for the very best content, they'll lessen up their standards if it's a little slower, but one sentence, the best, most relevant answer while being a good user experience. Next slide. All right. So the trend here is that I've seen a lot. So links have been backlinks, links pointing to your site have been the number one factor all these years. Wow, SEO is older than 20 years old now. And backlinks, which is all the links pointing to your site, has been the number one way Google decides who the expert really is. I'll mention here EAT right here in big letters, expertise, authoritative, and trust. I want to mention there's one more. Google's quality guidelines were updated this year to include the word experience. Why do I think that's important? They have taken their algorithm a step further, and this has to do with the quality, the page experience factors, to understand if let's say I have the experience as a human to be writing content about dermatology, something that I'm not, right? There were decades where someone could get away with not having the actual knowledge to create these websites that speak to the experience and get away with it. Now they've really, and you all have seen it, at least in how you set up your site, it should be something that you have these 4 factors in. You have, or at least what you're working for. You want to be the best in your industry. That means never publishing things that aren't accurate, because that directly impacts the trust of the user. So with that, there are ways, and I'm going to tactically mention a few of them here, that everyone should be doing to get a better reputation in your field. These are all the things that would leverage you to be this expert. Authors, for example, if you have a website where you're publishing content and you're not putting an author on it, first and last name, you should start, because Google now correlates, and they've been doing this for the last 10 years, in which they try to assess if the person authoring the post has the authority to do so. If you were to Google my name, you will get some articles written about SEO. You'll get content. You'll possibly get old reviews or comments about me in work that I've done for them, right? So Google can say in some sense that Lindsay Valdez at least has some experience speaking to SEO from the past. And that would be from posts that I've authored. Another one. So make sure that you do have authors on the post. Go even as far as to have a byline, a photo. Users are savvier than ever. They don't trust content anymore like they did that does not have a name on it, even sometimes a photo or a contact information. The last manual penalty of Google's that I probably will experience in my career, where Google was still emailing or giving notifications through Search Console of penalties, was that the site I worked on had been dropped from Google News and was going to take an organic drop because there were no authors listed on the posts, which was a sign to them of non-trust. Mentions. This is why backlinks may not matter as much as they have in the past, is Google's now factoring in how many brand mentions you're searched for in Google. So how many times a year did people search for Target or Best Buy or Yeti or any of these brands that have this big brand reputation? People search for it by name, and Google now uses that as a factor into brand trust and authoritativeness. And then branded links still do, of course, hold value, but almost in the form of partnerships. You want to go out and you want to write for others. You can co-brand, co-author posts where you're really getting out there. And of course, that will still build backlinks. I don't see backlinks going away entirely. So the more you have, it does speak still to your authoritativeness. So work hard to be the leader in your field, never publishing the clickbait headlines or inaccuracies, and always staying really true to that user.
So Linz, you mentioned backlinks a lot. Obviously, it's something we're all still doing on the content side. It's still it sounds like kind of still the number one way to gain authority, but how has it changed over the years?
I would say it's just not the only way, and it's not the only signal that Google, they've gotten so much more advanced in their own algorithm. Like I said, now they have mentions that they factor in. It kind of makes me smile to think of how links have been abused, right? That was the whole point of links, is that I started in my career, my official title was a link builder, and I worked at an agency, and I had all day to find 5 or 6 relevant websites for our client, the brand. It was an agency called iCrossing, that I would go out and I'd ask them to link back to my brand, and that sort of thing worked in that time. It just doesn't now. And then people started buying links, and that's exactly what happened. So the Google emphasizes one thing, then they start abusing it, and it kind of comes back. And now I imagine people just kind of abusing, searching for brands over and over again to kind of abuse that as well. But let's hope that everyone can just kind of stay authentically searching for ways to improve their brand.
We'll pause, I think, for a minute. I did drop in the Slack. I'm sorry, it's not Slack. We use Slack here, but in the chat, if anyone wants to ask questions, I am monitoring there. So if you saw my note, drop them there. Or does anyone have questions on these first few slides yet?
Hi, nope. Can you explain brand mentions? I don't know what that is.
What is your website?
It's hallmarkjenny.com. It's a Hallmark fan blog.
Okay. Hi. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you.
Say you, as you continue to build your content and you offer a Hallmark checklist for something like a tool, then someone searches for Hallmark by Jenny checklist included in their search query. So Google will factor that in. So if I'm searching for not just water bottles, that's an unbranded search. I'm searching for Stanley water bottles, using that brand in the query in Google directly. So
you're saying it doesn't even need a link anymore. Just the mention is sufficient.
Right. Well, they're calculating it in. They're seeing Google as factors in trends like that. I'll use that Stanley as an example. Stanley's a brand that has been around 100 years. All of a sudden, they've gotten all of a sudden their water bottles, which is really a Yeti competitor, are getting very popular. So if Google, who's gone all these years, where Stanley's not a very good brand, or they're not trendy in that way, and all of a sudden in the year 2022, millions of people started searching for Stanley water bottles, they're using that data to say, hey, this is a good brand now. People trust them. I'm not going to search for something I don't want to buy or trust, right? As almost just as efficient way to follow those sort of expertise trends as links is branded queries. Does that make a little more sense? It's just using the brand in the search.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, thanks for explaining that.
in the sense as for publishers, you want to attach that brand. People haven't spent as much time, at least when it comes to SEO, thinking about how, right? Because you were always going to rank for your brand. Target ranks for Target, and that was the easy one. They wanted to rank for, swimsuit retail shops, something non-branded. But in fact, it's a way that you want people talking about your brand. So when you can, let's see, watermark things, or at least when you're sharing and posting things, make sure people realize that, attach it to a brand as well.
Hi, Lindsay. I have a question for you. I'm with the Salt Lake Tribune, and we do branded content. It's not a huge part of our site, but it's definitely on there. And every once in a while, we'll have companies that do, like, as you were saying, like, like the top 10 product review type articles, and they'll share that with multiple news sites, right? I'm curious how much that kind of content would ding our site overall if we're mostly just a news site, right?
Okay, so someone comes to you with the requests for you to post it on the news site, or you're included in the roundup?
Posted on there as a branded content article.
Okay, so such a great question. This really does, even back to the last topic, your niche, right? So when you're thinking you're a news site and you focus on these areas and these local and these few topics of news, and someone wants you to put like the 10 best surf spots or surfboards or something that's so unrelated to your brand, is it going to have a huge impact? Because we have to keep money in mind. I'm always a big fan of the publishers making money. Keep that in mind. Is one or two gonna hurt you? If they're saying here's 10 grand to share this story, there's ways to protect yourself where you could no index it from search. That would impact performance. Or if it's such a small, one or two, it may not hurt. As a total, as a strategy overall, I believe there's room for the publisher to work with those brands or the sponsor, whoever wants you to post that, to come up with a topic that is great for your audience. I work with, in that sense of audience, why would they want to put something so unrelated? Are you the best publication? Are you the best audience? And can you work together to create a good topic that everyone would love, that makes more sense for your audience?
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was a great question. And I've dealt with it so many times when the brand comes in and they're already dead set on what they want to work with you on. I'd love to empower publishers to put their foot down and say, we protect our audience, and I'd love to work with you on a topic that would suit both.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great question. Because again, like looking at this slide, do you trust the same sources that when you see something so off topic on a website that just screams sponsored? I think less of it. And I try to put myself in the shoes of the users.
I was just thinking, even through that example, Lindsay, for SLC, it could be like great surf destinations from Salt Lake City, right? Like the closest surf destination. You obviously don't have surfing in Salt Lake, but like there's probably always an angle. So I love that idea.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Love the questions. You could go to the next slide. All right. Attention to desktop is the trend. Why? Because for the last, I don't even know how long, we've been talking about mobile. Everything. I mean, I want to, maybe 2015, maybe 2017 in there. It was just like, you were behind the times at that point. If you hadn't really started thinking in this, who remembers mobile first? It was an algorithm change. Maybe 2019, throwing out numbers, where Google said, we know you have both, the responsive design came into the picture, but primarily things were from mobile. Why? Because so many more people were, at that time, the amount of traction gained from mobile users was a lot. We've kind of averaged out now. Most sites are more mobile users than desktop, But I work with so many publishers at Freestar that desktop is their space. It's either a tool, a game, or you need it wouldn't be something you'd be on your phone looking at, is kind of the difference there. And we've seen a shift back to attention to desktop. Google, led by Google, I'd say the change in the beginning where they all of a sudden said, hey, we're going to apply that page experience algorithm that we were only measuring on mobile back to desktop, caused publishers to think, oh crap, I've been ignoring my desktop performance for the last some odd years. And how is that? So, in some sense, you could have created a mobile desktop fully responsive experience where they were one and the same. There's still room for optimizations to be had because there's a way to expose elements differently on the page. One of my favorite and one of the most common is when everyone went to the hamburger menu. Do you remember this? When all of a sudden you had those horizontal menus, and then on both designs, you had the little 3 lines at the top, the hamburger menu that comes out on mobile. Is it really the best experience on desktop for a user to have to not see the navigation, not see the drop downs, but have to take 2 to 3 extra clicks to even understand what buckets of content the publisher is an expert in? An example I love to use because it did so well is a former publisher I worked with, which was called stylecaster.com. They actually reverted back to having on desktop a horizontal menu, and on mobile, they would not expose that one and only have the hamburger. And on desktop, they have both. And it really gave users something immediate visually desktop to say, oh, style, fashion, whatever it was that they cover is right there on the page. Speed is the other one, and I believe that's on the right here. Google Search Console has areas now dedicated to desktop when they didn't before, and they will take those same speed concerns. Another good example is if AMP was your solution to mobile, which could have been for many publishers, it was the right solution to how you dealt with that time in which all of a sudden Google needed a responsive website that was really fast. Now, if a publisher didn't have a whole slew of resources to design a responsive one, they may take the accelerated mobile page route, which was Google's solution to a mobile design. That's fine. It actually can be monetized very effectively via Freestar if it's something you are doing it. We own the tech that monetizes AMP page views better than anyone else in the industry, and it can be a great solution, but it wasn't the only one and it wasn't for everyone. If you did use that, you may have been completely ignoring all desktop performance for the last little bit of time, and that would be speed factors as well. So recommendation here is really to get in the mindset of both your user. Think about your content, your expertise. This kind of all like aligns together. Think of what you're good in, and then think of the user experiencing the site in both ways and the differences it might be. For example, I'll use a recipe site or a food site. When you're in the store and you're on your mobile phone, and I'm quickly, awful cook, trying to decide something to make for a Christmas, and I'm searching on my phone, I might want to see the recipes at the top of the page versus sitting at my desktop. You have a lot, you might visually want to see some images differently. And so really keeping both sets in mind. And this recommendation is not to have 2 separate sites ever again. That would never be it. But you can actually code in ways that not everything is identical on the desktop version as the mobile. And then speed, yeah, that was second there. Take a look at the speed, run it through the page speed insights, and make sure that you're also on desktop pretty fast. All right. This is one of my favorites. So as you're thinking of Google and the users and providing them the content that they need to see, one enhancement I'd say is structured data. I love to talk about it. If you haven't, it kind of goes technical. If you haven't heard of this, It's a set of code that was standardized code behind the scenes where all the major search engines came together quite a few years back, sort of in like Yahoo, Bing, Google, and said, we're gonna all adhere with this set of code that is able to tell Google more about the entity it is and then provide them the data in them. This is all behind the scenes. And it can also be used to enhance the search results. This is where you Google something and you may see information you didn't in the search results themselves, like the 5-star rating, like right directly in the search results. Meta description even is it's code that they take from the back end and display it in the search results. Recipes, ratings, that would be one. Ingredients, things like that is in on the page that is shown in the search results. The knowledge graph, if you ever Google your brand and you see something come up on the right that's kind of a Wikipedia box, it talks about when you were founded, the more about your company. That's all pulled from this code. And I have a list right here that is the most popular ones used by publishers this year. And I can't really think of a site that isn't that a large site like the Reuters of the world, the largest brands there are, use structured data. But publishers that have implemented this, it's one of the moves the needle in the first 6 months more than many other changes I've seen them do, because Google can all of a sudden understand more about your business. You can give them the date you were founded, the date, your address, your location if you have a brick and mortar shops. You can provide them things that boost the trust they have in your company. Okay.
Hey, Lynn, sorry to pause you there. Lynn, we do have a question coming in.
Okay, great.
From Christian. Hi, Christian. Thank you for the question. Are redirects for HTTP to HTTPS and www to non-www, that's a mouthful, considered bad? And what's the correct way to handle these redirects?
Okay. That is not related to this slide, but say it one more time. What's the redirect? So you should not have multiple versions of your site indexed. So if you, let's take the second example, I think it's maybe easier. www versus non-www sites.
Yep. Are
right?
redirects for that? Yeah. Are they considered bad? Mm-hmm.
No, you should not have, you should have one version. You can also do it in the form of a canonical tag. I've seen this one as well, where the version that's not your preferred version, let's use that language. You should have one preferred version of your site and homepage and a whole set of pages. You don't need to do a full set of mass redirects in order to, I almost think that would be more damaging than just using a canonical tag to use to label your preferred. Either way, you should do them. Google will sort of disregard the mass redirects, right? Everybody says mass redirects are bad for the site. They will disregard that when you are trying to clean up the subdomain you use or don't use on yours. Use 301. 301 redirect is permanent.
Great. And we have another question, but we'll hold it till the end because it kind of goes back to backlinks. So keep on heading. Okay. Yeah, keep on the slide.
No problem. Finishing this one up real fast was just going to list the types of structured data. If you're a publisher and you're out there and you're going to jot some notes down, these are the most popular. I can also follow up with this information. Logo structured data tells Google more. That's all the business facts. They're going to let you specify your social accounts. It says like same as, and you can connect everything about your brand together. If you're a food blogger, use recipe structured data. Article or news article. So for Salt Lake, for any sort of news articles, you should definitely use the news articles, but there's also a standard one. If you're just like a publisher doing content about any sort of evergreen things, use the article. FAQ, that's a major one because Google will take these are frequently asked questions. If they're on your site and it lists like, even if the headline is an actual question about whatever it is you cover that's talked about a lot, you can put that in the code. How to is another popular one. This tells Google the steps of how to make a pie. You can list all the steps. Again, this is code behind the page. And then lastly is review. If you're a publisher doing product reviews, book reviews, event reviews, reviewing anything, there is a set of structured data that can lead to Google understanding more about that page, higher rankings, and enhanced look in the search results. The second part of this is users what they need. I feel like this half of the slide will be more digestible. How many of you feel the pain when I say the word long form content? I bet I've said it hundreds and hundreds of times in my career for a set of years. Google favors long form. Google favors long form. And it's because Google was out trying to get rid of thin content, or publishers that were only trying to, you know, just get half a post up and they didn't thoroughly cover the topic. But what it led to over the years in so many cases was too much off topic, fluffy. The story before the recipe is a popular one, right? When you have to read about all the stuff before you get to the recipe, and people would be like, why do recipe bloggers do that? And someone would say SEO, and it just gave this very negative connotation about like getting the user what they needed in a timely manner. I think I was talking about this with someone yesterday, where I'd have to read 1,000 words to get to, you know, the celebrity baby name. I just wanted to know that, and why is it buried in the article? Sure, we want users to see ads, of course. You want your users to have to, you know, to pay to play in a sense of seeing an ad before they get what they want. But I do believe there's some middle ground of just putting it at the top, putting some answers in a 200-word answer, if that sufficiently covers the topic, and not having to kind of go off of this, everything has to be 1,000 words to publish. I think we're going to see a shift to some short form content in the coming year. Questions?
I was going to say, Lindsay, could they think about shortening content? 'Cause I'm thinking about that recipe situation, and it happens to me as a consumer of content, but I'm someone who appreciates ads on the internet given my job. But is that something that video could offset to make sure that they're serving ads there, but we're getting the content to them quicker? Is that a solution there?
That's a great solution, because if you think about it, even if you were, this came up a lot at the holidays, when I'm in the store and I can't find the ingredients and I'm digging and digging, you could essentially format your article to have that at the top while a video played right there. They don't have to scroll. If you're a Freestar publisher not using our video solution, please reach out to your CSM, us, anyone to find out what that is, because if we are going to have this shift in the industry where above the fold gives the answer of what they're looking for, it's a great supplement to that to have a video running, and you'll probably monetize more than you would on the 5 in content standard banners they would have viewed to get all the way down. So that is one great way to get around monetization. A second great way, what about the jump to recipe buttons and all that functionality? You can, I see it now where it's not even on recipes, the table of contents modules at the top, mobile and desktop, where if you're going to have an article that's 2,000 words, giving the user where they can get right to the spot. Jump to recipe, it caused an uproar because you're skipping all the ad units. What you can do is right above the recipe, put a static banner and drop them right there. Like, users have to also understand, the reader understands, I'm getting a free recipe. If you want me to see your ad, I will. But at least put me in the general idea of where the recipe is, or whatever content you're looking for. Then view an ad, and then I have my information. And you're really just also not being a complete pain to your users. That stuff sticks with people. And I love a site where I know that I'll be able to get to what I want, and I'll go back to it, even in the rankings. If it goes, and if it isn't ranked number one, I'll remember. So think about the user again, providing them what they need. On the other side, if you have a code team, structured data is, I believe, a non-negotiable for publishers, because the best of the best, the top ranked sites do have structured data implemented. So when it comes down to like, okay, you have two similar sites with really high quality, good, useful information, and one has structured data and Google's better to, able to understand it a bit better, those sites are winning out in the search results. So don't be the one left without a simple code, one-time code implementation. All right, I am somewhat on time here. I think this has just been an incredible session. This may be a couple more trends here. Product reviews, affiliate programs. So I want to say in the last few years, I've been a proponent of publishers incorporating some sort of shoppable content, not even as the additional revenue that it drives, but for the user. Because how many times do I see something and read something, a product I love, or maybe you see it in an image, and then it have to go to all these steps to be able to actually purchase it or know the brand that sells it, that kind of information. So if you, and this could go for any topic, any niche that you have, if you are a parenting website or any sort of family content website, there's an endless fits to that are product related. The problem was, and this comes into the penalty that I talked about before in the beginning and all the updates, is that publishers were just creating a list. I don't want a list, static link of your top 5, favorite baby jackets or whatever it is you're shopping for. You want to know more about it as a user. So this is where you can have pros and cons. Some of the best sites out there, highest quality sites, do this so beautifully, where they're talking about products. So you have this list of 10 products, but within that, they're actually saying the pros and cons. So they're not just, a blanket recommendation to all these, but taking it a step further to say, this might not be the product for you if it does these things, that these are the cons. So being more honest about it, and not just copying and pasting the product descriptions and the information available from the manufacturer. I think that's the biggest one. You had all these sites just copying, scraping Amazon and putting it right on their pages. Google has said the uptick in amount of coverage for product reviews became in hundreds of thousands for one product. That's how much publishers embrace the product review strategy, that Google had to come aside and weed out all the ones that were just regurgitating, just copying and pasting. So if you haven't incorporated some way of shoppable content into your brand, there is almost always a route that you can take. I would say some of those full news sites may struggle, but you're always going to have ways to incorporate products into some content, I'd say. But if you're covering some evergreen content in any way, definitely there's a product angle that's actually beneficial to your user. That's another thing, is I've had to combat this attitude that affiliate is gross, organic search does not cross over into product rep. And that's not true. That's not true. It's a service to the user. It improves site engagement. Again, brand partnerships can drive revenue, backlinks drive SEO. So having a way to include that in your content, but also don't just, you'll get penalized if you're just not bringing any additional value to the product side of things.
Hey, Linz, we have a quick question on the last slide just around structured data, so I'll ask it really quickly. Do you have any specific site recommendations for pubs to learn more about implementing structured data? And maybe this is something that we can get out afterwards.
I was gonna say, and Google has a section dedicated to it that I also like schema.org if it's just on the code side. Schema.org is the type of structured data, and it will give, if you had to pass something on to a developer, I would say Google and schema.org would be your resources. If you're just learning more about it, look at, I would say, SEO industry sites like searchenginejournal.com, something like that. Search Engine Land are some good just industry sites that you can search on structured data. And I'm also very happy to find specific articles and send them after as a follow-up to this.
Hey,
Someone just
Lindsay.
oh,
Hey,
yeah, go for it,
hey, this
Damien.
is Damien from Science News. I just wanted to add, I think Rank Math, also some people may use Yoast, but both are really good tools if you're on WordPress for anything that's kind of site-wide metadata. They do that really well, and it's kind of a set it and forget it. And then they also have plugins, or they have additional blocks that make it possible to do the article specific metadata, like the FAQ schema that you were talking about earlier.
Thank you, Damien. That's perfect. Both
And
are
then
great.
Tony offered Chat GPT does a good job creating structured data code for you. That's Chat G as in girl PT. Oh, can Damien, someone just asked for you to repeat yours, Damien? Maybe they didn't catch them.
Yeah, sorry. The two common metadata search plugins for WordPress are Yoast. Yoast is probably the most commonly used one. And we were on Yoast for a long time until this year. And we transitioned over to Rank Math, which is the other one. And it's kind of the fast growing competitor to Yoast, which I personally prefer because I find it more configurable and feature rich. And I also like their tools for assessing they have a fairly usable checklist for when you're producing an article and want to see how well it's going to do on search.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are some good tools out there. That would be a follow-up too, Lauren. Let's get out some other tools just on content tools and
Great.
kind of a follow-up. All right, that was so good. Thank you. Moving to the last slide, I believe, was index optimization. So back to, I may have been last year, but some of you will remember when in Google Search Console, Google started, you'd say like, hey, I spent all this time on my article. What? And it's been 2 days and I'm used to being crawled at a fast pace for my site, and Google's not crawling this. You go to Search Console, putting it in a tool to see a message from Google that says something like, oh yeah, we saw it. We're just choosing not to index it. And why? But if you think about it, it's like 70 million new blog posts alone are published a month on WordPress. 70 million. There's 50 million brownie recipes, or these things that people continue to publish, not to mention all the regurgitated content and the rewording that people are doing. Google's getting stricter about what they're indexing. It could be for multiple reasons. It could be just the overcrowded, oversaturated topics, and they literally don't need every publication. They don't need to use their own sources and indexing and bandwidth to crawl pages when the best news sites in the world have already covered this topic. They're going to rank it. No one's going past page 2, so who cares? But that's a problem for on multiple reasons, especially for publishers who are putting in the effort to create content. We have to find a way to sort of do a crawl optimizations where Google sees your articles, Google sees some of the good stuff, and you don't need them to see feed pagination, your 2 million tag pages that you left indexed, all the category pages that may create value or not. And then not to mention the old stuff. One way to see how much is indexed on your site, you like Google Search Console has a whole area. It's called indexing section. It literally says indexing on the left of Google Search Console, and you can see the ratio. I went in it today for a publisher, a new publisher that's coming onto Freestar. I looked in it. They have something like 200,000 pages not accessible or not indexed, and 2,000 pages of good stuff. So that ratio is off on what Google is considering their good quality content. They may also have quality issues from before. I've worked with publishers who say, yeah, prior to 2009, who knows what we published, what we said, if it was true, if it was completely, you know, not suitable for work, and all these different ways that would impact their modern day content. So there's tactics that you can go through to clean that up and make sure that Google ignores, you know, there you could no index content from anything that's low quality and gets no traffic. It shouldn't be accessible to Google. So publishers taking on these big content cleanup projects in which they're getting Google to see the good stuff and drop the bad stuff, that has paid off over the years. If you want to, I want to hear what someone has to say here. If you want to see what Google sees of yours, you can go to google.com in the browser, put in site : then your main domain. Again, site : latesthairstyles.com, whatever your domain is, hit enter, and Google will return to you everything that Google has access to. And it's a good way. If you do it and you see, oh, shoot, I've got 3 million pages indexed and I really don't know how, that can be a red flag that Google's not, that the overall health is better than what Google's giving you credit for. And then you just need to kind of clean some things up.
Linz, we have some questions coming in on this topic. How quickly do you think these indexing changes are moving the needle?
I would say structured data moves the needle technically in traffic much faster. I think for the long term, though, I worked with a publisher, don't mind saying their name. I worked with this one called hollywoodlife.com. Tons of gossip, tons of just slander and things that were not true. And it was more of I worked with the team on a brand evolution and to get rid of all those things. Within a year, they had recovered from penalties, and Google had factored in a lot of the dropped the pages that they didn't want indexed anymore. If you wonder, right, Google can see a no index tag, but that doesn't mean that they drop it. It did take, I'd say, a year, but they were able to reach traffic levels that they had prior to the penalties, and it fully in this case had to do with the amount of old, poor quality, thin content that they had, putting in optimization so that Google dropped all of that and shed light on their new editorial coverage. Not to mention that we're just getting started, right? The internet SEO has been around not that long. The internet, if you're publishing tons of content a month, the news sites, think of that in 20 years. How much they'll be able to see. And it's almost a way of keeping control on your own content and your own costs internally and things to carry all those pages, your carbon footprint per se.
Great. We had another question. And been any effect on ranking since Google SERPs moved to lazy load?
Such a good question. Did you guys know that? Has anyone seen that? So
I'm like, I think Rachel said she just noticed it yesterday. So this must be new. Is this new information?
Yes. So my whole career life, you had the 10 blue links on the first page. That's what Google first page rankings were. Now, I'm so glad you asked this question. I actually think we're over time too. I'm going to keep talking.
We are. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to keep talking about this though. So lazy load, now all of a sudden you scroll down the page of Google on, might be desktop, might be both, and it lazy loads another set of rankings. What I found myself, I think this does open opportunity for those second page rankings to maybe see a little more traffic, because who knew we're as lazy as we are, right? The idea for me to have to push a button to the second page? Absolutely not. Nobody's going to do that. But if I can just casually keep scrolling through results, same like you do with your Instagram feed, right? We're finger scrollers on the phone, then I found myself looking for brands I recognized a little more and just kind of not being as, oh, I'm going to click on the very first one. So you can repeat the question if I've seen any difference. Maybe not, because it's so soon to tell. What did this happen like a couple months ago? I do think that it gives a greater opportunity to pages not ranking on the first page to get traffic. And I also think people need to optimize that their meta descriptions maybe a little better, also title tags, because you're being considered in a way that you weren't before. I found myself clicking on things that were way farther down since that change has been made. I'd love to hear if anybody else had experience with that. I liked Google making that change. It was very interesting.
Does anyone have any experience they want to share before I move to the next question? I know this is going a little over, but we're really appreciating the questions.
Brand, focus on brand. This is a marketing PR human like Lauren would love to hear. It matters. People recognizing your brand out there. I love going out in the community and saying, I work for Freestar. We work with publishers. Oh, I've heard of them, right? You want that to be your brand.
We have a question on the same topic. Is there a limit to how much you can index in a month versus no index? I think that's what she meant. Yeah. Is there a limit to how much you can index in a month?
No, not so much like as a number, a hard number. I don't think so. Publishers, I mean, the biggest news sites of the world can generate 20, 30, 40, 50 stories a day that are indexed, right?
Sorry, Lynn, clarification on this question. How much can you no index?
Okay. That is,
sorry about that. That was, I think,
I would phase it out. I honestly would not no index. You want to be aware of anything that might like jolt Google to all of a sudden see this major change where they had 20,000 pages indexed and all of a sudden they have 2,000. That's going to like shake their trust a little bit. So I would keep the good stuff indexed as is. And then I believe we did things like in the phases of a year by year. When I was referring to that project before with Hollywood Life, we would take like, all right, let's look at everything that was published in 2010. Let's see if, and this did take some dev maneuvers of scrapes and VLOOKUPs with traffic, but to find what was published and is not getting traffic, and then indexing anything in that bulk year that they want to. So great question. I don't think there's a hard number, but do it in phases based on your overall size. You don't want Google to all of a sudden see 50% of the pages that they used to. Phase it out a little naturally. It also helps with errors. I have absolutely had disasters where we took down or no index pages that were getting traffic accidentally, and it's painful and it takes time to get back.
I'm going to go back, if that's okay, Lindsay, on a question on backlinks. I know we're over, so if anyone wants to jump, totally understand. I just want to get to these last two questions, if that's okay. And if you jump and you want to hear more from us, you know where to reach us. We're available. The question is, backlink is an important factor, but it's hard to get for free now. We have to buy it in, anyway in most of the niche. Is it okay to buy quality backlinks, as everyone is doing that in 2022, 2023? Is it okay to buy backlinks?
I don't know, 2022, 2023, backlinks have always been something that has been done. It's one of those things that's with caution. If Google knew you were buying a high scale, amount of links, it also depends. Are they relevant? If you are literally going to buy links, make them very relevant to your niche. And also see if you can blow that out to something a slightly realer, right? I'm not naive to knowing Google can't tell every link that's been purchased. Of course they cannot. So make them relevant or as natural as they could be. And it is a risk. You're going with a risk. That is a risky thing to do. Maybe have an article written. Maybe something can be a little more natural of a fit. blown out to be more relational versus just purchasing a link. Otherwise, I'd say don't buy links from lesser quality sites than your own. Keep it as quality as you can. And there may be a reciprocal situation too. I still see that done quite a bit. And I don't think Google can actually track reciprocal links. I'm I'm pretty gray hat when it comes to what Google did or does, but it carries a risk. If you do it in an unnatural way, you're going to flag a search engine and you may be penalized. Same with AI generated content.
Okay, and another question we had from a while back was Chris from Cheapism asked, over the last few years, they diversified their content due to syndication efforts. They're an MSN partner, so they've lost their niche, but are trying to get it back. Does it make sense to unindex content that does not speak to this renewed focus?
Incredible question. Absolutely. No index things. If you've also, syndication is a great strategy. It doesn't always have to be indexed in the first place. So I have been a content syndication partner. That's been part of my career that I've worked with brands on. This is an MSN has the biggest model. This is when they'll publish pretty much your full story in either, I think MSN is rev share, but you'll see this when, Yahoo will publish content as well. You can no index it from the start if it's just to go up on MSN. Even Amazon has a syndication program now where you can read full articles in their own engine. Take down content that's completely off brand and not driving organic traffic. You can no index it and leave it live, leave it up on the site. It doesn't have to weigh in on how Google sees your brand. And for your site specifically, I'm very familiar with Cheapism, would love to work more with you on that. Feel free to reach out. Solid brand and tightening up, regaining controls of what your, those pillar topics that you're known for could be, groundbreaking in the next decade for the brand. I love the idea. And the thought that publishers along the way have made allowances for content that doesn't tie into their niche. If it is not giving you organic traffic, you can add no index tags.
Awesome. And we'll make this the last question just because of time, but it seems like we might have to do something like this again next month, which is fine. And we're happy to do it. So the last question we'll have for today, and if you have more, please let us know. With the helpful content update, what is the value of news style, journalistic style articles in this landscape?
Helpful content, news style. Say that question again. I mean, it's still very
relevant. With the helpful content update, what is the value of news style and journalistic style articles in this current landscape?
So helpful content update is a signal. It was launched to just make sure, it could have been, I at the time speculated that it was to weed out AI generated. So if that's what your news articles are being written with, that could be something. No matter what, if there is a point to the article, if it matches the relevancy of the query and you're just sharing information, cover the news story well, cover the journal, that it still has its place. It has its place more than ever if you can just figure out how to actually give something tangible or useful and usable content, right? Is it useful? Do they learn something? Can you do something with that content? Make sure that things have a purpose rather than writing things that just, my least favorite style of content is like the essay style. And that might've been what you were talking in the journalistic kind of style writing. If you're just talking about a story, that is going to struggle. That doesn't have like an actual search query to go with it and a point and something to teach the user, because Google's an information.
I think she was saying, so this like news and journalistic style versus tips, focusing on tips and answering questions.
I would say the signal is out there targeting that second kind of content that you saw. So that's where that content will be probably, or where that signal will be most graded against that style content. Less or so on the journalistic. That's a good question. Less or so on just the news sources that are covering topics.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for all your questions. We are so thankful for all this engagement. we'll wrap it up really quickly here. We have a step challenge coming your way if you're an existing Freestar publisher. If not, you should become one so that you can join our step challenge. We're so thankful to Lindsay for all of her amazing expertise. And we will be in touch with you on February's workshop. But again, please, you know, that if you didn't ask your question today, please know that our doors are always open, and you know where to reach us. And again, thank you so much for joining. Linz, is there anything else you wanted to say before we close?
No, only that I could do this all the time. Thank you guys so much for joining, for watching, for spending time with us today. Lindsay.valdez@freestar.io. Great. I'm happy to talk anytime. Thank you all so much.
I'll put her email address right here for everyone really quickly because it's Lindsay with an A.
This is great. And you're all going to rock it this year. SEO, I feel it. This is your year.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you
Thanks,
all
guys.
so much.